On the spiritual level of human expression, the sun card represents illumination, the fifth stage of enlightenment. Oversimplified, illumination is the full realization of the higher self. The higher self is the single cosmic being that emanates, guides, protects, and inspires all souls. On the tree of life, the sphere of the higher self is Tiferet, the central sephira. Prior to illumination, the higher self is like a sun hidden behind a thick cloud. That's the cloud upon the sanctuary. We can't see the higher self, but its light still gets through to us. Illumination renders that cloud and lets us behold the higher self in its full splendor. Have a look at the sun card. The day star in the picture represents the higher self. The children stand for Netzach and Hod, the creative field and intellectual sphere. The two are dancing, meaning they are happy. Happiness is the feeling related to the state of mind this card represents. When we were children, we were 80% soul and 20% ego. 80% of the time we were happy and loving. As we grew older, adversity gnawed at our happiness and willingness to love. Eventually, the ego and fear and anger took over at the expense of our soul and feelings. As you can see, illumination returns the creative field and intellectual spheres to innocence. Innocence means no more selfish desiring, no more biased thinking, and no more manipulation. We return to love and the sense of wonder and curiosity we expressed as children. In Matthew 18:3, Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." Now replace kingdom of heaven with enlightenment and entering with illumination. Mind that we won't return to the ignorant innocence of children, but to a knowing, intentional innocence. This is a tempered innocence, tempered by adversity and resistance. It also means that we will turn into children of the higher self. Well, actually our souls have always been the children of the higher self, so in fact we don't attain a new consciousness. We remember something we've forgotten a long time ago. As you can see, surrendering to the higher self doesn't mean surrendering to a master or Lord. Christ ain't no Lord. Christ is our parent or elder brother, if you so will. If we will surrender to the higher self and allow it to guide, protect and inspire us, she will take us all the way to illumination. The Hierophant or intuition card pictures this surrender. In the 14th century, Mahmud Shabistari, a Persian Sufi poet, wrote, "Go, sweep out the chamber of your heart, prepare to be the dwelling place of the beloved. When you depart, you will enter. In you, void of yourself, he will display his beauty." With this, Mahmud pointed out that illumination results from purification and ego dissolution. We make space for the higher self. Mind the phrase, he will display his beauty. Beauty is the English translation of Tiferet, the sephira of the higher self. Jesus meant the same thing when he said, if you want to be perfect, perfection means cosmic consciousness, sell your possessions and give it to the poor, and you will have treasures in heaven. Then follow me. As you can see, Jesus was a minimalist, but we can take this also as an allegory. Now, replace to be poor with to be egoless, and sell all possessions with decluttering the mind and memory. The higher self has many titles. In ancient Egypt religion, the higher self's name was Horus. In Hinduism, it's Krishna. In Buddhism, it's Buddha. The Aztecs gave it the name Quetzalcoatl. And in Christianity, the title is, of course, Christ. In a religious context, Jesus is the great exception. In an enlightenment context, Jesus is the great example. A man who achieved illumination and more. Illumination changed Jesus Nazareth into Jesus Christ. Everybody who achieves illumination, the full realization of the higher self, can claim the title Christ. One day, you will claim this title. And since nobody will be left behind, everybody will eventually achieve illumination and gain this title. Illumination doesn't come all at once. Usually a few brief visions of the higher self take place before the permanent illumination. Religious and personal beliefs may color these pre-visions. For this reason, many took a vision of Christ as a vision of Jesus Christ, the person. I took the following pre-vision from the book Lame Deer, Seekers of Visions, page 286. I wound up first with a Catholic aunt in Austria who ran her own little farm. She was so pious that she received regular visits from Saint Joseph and Saint Jude Thaddeus, her favorite saints. I could hear her talking to them on some dark nights. She once encountered Christ in full daylight on the Reichsbrücke, the large bridge spanning the Danube near Vienna. She pretended to stumble and fall in order to adore him. She did not dare to do so openly for fear that people might consider her crazy and drag her off into the asylum. She reproached herself for the rest of her life for not having openly acknowledged him. The experience of Christ is not limited to Christians. Here is a Jewish testimony which happened during a near-death experience. I felt a wonderful feeling washing over me, a sense of peace and power. I felt love and a sense of wonder as I realized that any question I could come up with would be answered. There was Jesus. I was stunned and said, "I don't believe in you." He smiled and said the etheric equivalent of, "Tough shit, here I am." Looking into his eyes, I asked, "You mean you've been with me the whole time and I didn't know?" And his reply was, "Lo, I'm with thee always, even beyond the end of the world." He asked me whether I want to reincarnate. The next testimony is from the book The Fire from Within, page 268, written by Carlos Castaneda. Carlos used the term mold of man for the higher self, which is a good title for the higher self too. The title mold of man reminds of Genesis 2:7, which describes how Jehovah Elohim molded Adam from the ground's dust. You may not know this, but Adam doesn't mean man. It means human. A human can be male or female. According to ageless wisdom, Adam was not the first male Homo sapiens, but the higher self, the primordial human, which is the cosmic being from which all souls emanate. For this reason, ageless wisdom assigned Adam to Tifereth as well. Anyway, bridges seem to bring out the Christ in people. I came to a bridge, and right there, as if it had been waiting for me, I saw the mold of man as a resplendent, warm, amber light. I fell on my knees, not so much out of piety, but as a physical reaction to awe. The sight of the mold of man was more astounding than ever. The mold of man was superimposed on the bridge at first, and I refocused my eyes and saw that the mold of man extended up and down into infinity. The bridge was but a meager shell, a tiny sketch superimposed on the eternal. And so were the minute figures of people who moved around me, looking at me with unabashed curiosity. But I was so beyond their touch, although at that moment I was as vulnerable as I could be. The mold of man had no power to protect me or spare me, yet I loved it with a passion that knew no limits. While we may experience previsions of the higher self as external experiences, illumination takes the form of an inner experience. The allegory of the Rosicrucian vault describes the hidden place inside us where the resurrection of the higher self takes place. Allow me to quote from the True and Invisible Rosicrucian Order by Paul Foster Case. Underneath another strong plate of brass was hidden the body of our careful and wise father, described as a fair and worthy body, whole and unconsumed. This dead body of CRC is the same as the dead Osiris of the Egyptian ritual. One does truly come upon it in the course of discovering the mysteries of the secret vault. What the farmer does not tell us is that this dead body is brought to life, yet personal experience of what is shadowed forth in this allegory of the opening of the vault culminates in that glorious resurrection. Now listen to Renee Turner, a Jewish woman who had a vision of the higher self during a near-death experience that involves a room with unsubstantial walls. I became aware that I must be dead. I arrived in an explosion of glorious light into a room with insubstantial walls, standing before a man in his 30s, about 6 feet tall, with reddish-brown shoulder-length hair and an incredible neat, short beard and mustache. He wore a simple white robe. Light seems to emanate from him, and I felt he was ancient and wise. He welcomed me with indescribable love, tranquility and peace. No words. I felt, I can sit at your feet forever and be content, which struck me as a strange thing to say, think or feel. I became fascinated by the fabric of his robe, trying to figure out how light could be woven. A full regeneration of the body-mind vehicle follows illumination. Regeneration is one of the prime meanings of the Sun card. That's what St. John meant when he said, I baptize you with water, but he who is mightier than I is coming, the strap of whose sandals I am not worthy to untie. He will baptize you with the Holy Spirit and fire. The higher self baptizes with spirit after illumination took place. The account of Charles G. Finney is a testimony of this two-staged event, the vision of the higher self and the subsequent baptizing with spirit. I took this testimony from James Williams' book, The Varieties of Religious Experience. There was no fire and no light in the room. Nevertheless, it appeared as if it were perfectly light. As I went in and shut the door, it seemed as if I met the Lord, Jesus Christ, face to face. It did not occur to me that it was wholly a mental state. It seemed that I saw him as I would see any other man. He said nothing, but looked at me in such a manner as to break me right down at his feet. I have always since regarded this as a most remarkable state of mind, for it seemed that he stood before me, and I fell down at his feet, and I poured out my soul to him. I wept aloud like a child, and made such confessions as I could with my choked utterance. I must have continued in this state for a good while, but my mind was too much absorbed to recollect anything I said. But I know, as soon as my mind became calm, I returned to the front office and found that the fire that I had made out of large wood was nearly burned out. But as I turned and was about to take a seat by the fire, I received a mighty baptism of the Holy Ghost. Without any expectations of it, without ever having the thought in my mind that there was such a thing for me, without any recollection that I had ever heard the thing mentioned by any person in the world, the Holy Spirit descended upon me in a manner that seemed to go through me, body and soul. No words can express the wonderful love that was shed abroad in my heart. I wept aloud with joy and love, and I do not know what I should say. I literally bellowed out the unutterable gushings of my heart. These waves came over me and over me and over me, one after the other, until I recollected. I cried out, I shall die if those waves continue to pass over me. I said, Lord, I cannot bear any more, yet I had no fear of death. How long I continued in this state, I do not know, but it was late in the evening when a member of my choir came to see me. He was a member of the church. He found me in this state of loud weeping and said, Mr. Finney, what ails you? I could make him no answer for some time. He then said, Are you in pain? I gathered myself up and replied, No, but so happy that I cannot live. Let's have another one. Okay. The next testimony is that of MCL, recorded by Richard Maurice Buke, or Buck, in his book, Cosmic Consciousness. In the month of February 1890, just following my 37th birthday, Reverend J.E.L. of Canada came to assist me in a series of special meetings in my church. My affection for him gained during his stay. He had been gone 3 days when, thinking of him far through the night, the grey of the morning was already in the heavens, the conviction came to me that in him I had met an incarnation of Christ. I stood a moment transfixed with the thought. Was that which I had held as a theory to be realized as a fact? My friend was forgotten in the vision of Christ, who had come to me, not from without, but through the gates which open inwardly. I knew him, was conscious of him in my own spirit, soul and body. Then with that unfolding consciousness there came a suffusion, as of a delicate cloud or haze, which searched the entire body, was more invasive than light, more penetrating than heat, more enriching than electricity. It was as if I had been plunged into a bath of fluid more subtle and permeating than ether. Against the inflow and outflow of that enswaving essence, the body was not as resistant as the air to a bird's wing or morning mist to the sunbeam. The rapture, the exaltation, the divinity of that moment passed as knowledge. Then swiftly came the awe of the mysterious presence that filled me, and the consciousness of the whole creation, universe, went thrilling through me, not as a thought, a sensation, an emotion, but as the vital breath of God. This grew until I found myself rising and expanding into the infinite, being diffused and lost therein, and the mind and body reeled. Feeling myself falling, I exclaimed, "The vision is too much. I cannot look upon the face of God and live. Father in heaven, it is enough." And the voice answered. I sank on my bed and slept like a child. As you can see, illumination has 2 stages. The first stage is the resurrection of the higher self inside us. The second stage is the inner baptizing with the sacred spirit that regenerates our body-mind vehicle. That's why Aegis Wisdom assigned regeneration to the Sun card. This spiritual regeneration of the body-mind vehicle increases the life expectancy of the illuminated far beyond what is naturally possible. An illuminated person can easily become 150, 200 or more years old and still look young. Likely, the baptizing with the Spirit unlocks dormant DNA capabilities that undo aging processes. Spiritual regeneration gives the illuminated sufficient time to complete enlightenment in their current lifetime. They still need to reach 2 more milestones. First, transcendence, represented by the Judgment card, and cosmic consciousness, represented by the World card. I hope you enjoyed this video on illumination and discovered an inspiration or 2. Please help to spread the light with a like and a share. And don't forget to subscribe. Love and light.